Hey folks, ideas for my images come from a wide variety of places. The idea for the image that is the subject of this video came from a 3D model that I found online, which is of a Deadpool mask. I was searching around one day looking for something that I could print off and practice my painting skills on. So that struck my fancy, so I printed it off and painted it up. And when it was done, it looked kind of like this. In fact, it looked a lot like this. This is the model. So this is just a simple mask, as you can see. It's just got the front of his face, top of his head, back is hollow, and there's not even anything in his eye sockets here so that is normally white. So my imagination immediately got to thinking, what can I do to make these eyes white? And the first thing I thought of was maybe using some rubber gloves and just stretching the gloves in the back of the mask and using that to be white. The other ideas of, well, it's pretty much the only idea I had. But then I thought, what if I could use light? As a photographer, light is always a tool in my toolbox. And I thought maybe I could use light and make an interesting image out of this. So the idea that I came up with was to shine a bright light through the back of the mask and have the mask facing the camera, kind of floating in a sea of black in midair, have these lights shining through and illuminating the eyes. So that is what I set out to try to do. So for that, I needed a plan. And the first thing I needed to do was have something to, one, light the back and to have the mask sit on, because I wanted a kind of like sitting in midair look. So what I came up with as an idea was to use a Platypod Ultra on a gooseneck attachment. This is one of my go-to setups. The Platypod is a small mini tripod that's often used for holding camera gear, but it also has this gooseneck, which is flexible, that allows you to position anything you attach to the top of it as much as you want. And what I was going to use is this Lume Cube, which is the first generation Lume Cube, which is a small but very, very bright light. So this would allow me both to put the mask on top, like this, as well as have the light shining through the lights. Now, the problem with that is when the light shines through, it's going to be this point light, and I needed something to diffuse it. So what I was going to use for diffusing it was this little magical device right here. This is a Microfogger 2 from Vozentech, and it's one of my latest fog machine that is used to generate fog, as any other fog machine is, but it also produces a stupidly large amount of smoke, which is perfect for my needs. It fits in most scenes that I shoot. I shoot miniatures, so having something small works, and it also is remote controlled, which is a benefit, and I'll be using remote control a lot throughout this shot. And the final thing I need is a little bit of light on front. So if you imagine if I have a big dark background and I have a light shining through here facing camera, there's going to be no light coming this way to illuminate it. So to solve that problem, I'm going to use this Lume Cube mini panel, which is a nice wide light that can be used to put some light on the front of the Deadpool, just to give the front of the mask some definition in the camera. So that's the plan. Let's see if it actually works when it hits the road. That's the plan. Let's see if it actually works, and head to the studio and set up the shot. All of the shooting I do in my studio tends to be in this light box right here. As you can see, I already have my Lume Cube Ultra on the Platypod with the gooseneck ready to go, including this diffusing panel attachment, which is just magnetically sealed, but it will help even out the light that goes into the scene. Quick test of the lights just to make sure everything works, and then confirm that it works with the remote on the camera. It looks good to go. This light box also has an LED panel at the top, which will provide some ambient light for the scene. So I put the Deadpool head onto the lamppost and lined everything up in the camera, and I was good to start composing. The smoke machine needs to be powered on. And then placed behind the Deadpool mask so the smoke will slide up the mask and fill out the area where the eyes are. And then a quick test of the remote to make sure everything that's working there. The front light is on a gooseneck attachment, kind of pointing up, just to give a little kiss of light to the front of the mask and to provide a little bit of illumination. Test out all the remotes, make sure everything works before we start shooting. And then it's just a matter of shooting. Shooting with by hitting the smoke machine down and taking multiple shots, trying to capture the exact moment where the smoke curls around the mask in the perfect way to get the effect that I'm looking for. So I took about 100 frames trying to capture the perfect amount of smoke coming through the eyes. And the final image that I picked was the one here. And the reason why I picked it is that the eyes were all fully covered with glow from the light diffusing through the smoke. And that the smoke was leaking out a little bit through the eyes, but you could still see most of the mask. This is the one that I felt most pleasing to my vision. So this is the one I picked. So this is straight out of camera. And as you can see, there is a lot of little dots and divots in the mask. Some of that is dust, some of that is paint, bad paint job, and some of it is just the mask being scuffed as I moved it around. You can also see a little bit of the gooseneck down at the bottom here. So the first thing I do is add a layer to fix all of those using the spot healing brush and just getting rid of all those little spots so we have a nice clean mask to work with. And I happen to dump all of this into a smart object. I love smart objects because it allows me to work non-destructively. So I use that. So the main image, the main document I have here, at the base of the image is that smart object containing the cleaned up Deadpool mask. And everything else after this is really just color grading and texturizing. I like using Luts a lot, which in Photoshop uses color lookup tables. LUT stands for lookup table. And I have several that I like, and I've used a couple new ones for this particular mask because it's a little bit more different than my normal style. The first LUT I used was from the new Batman movie that's coming out shortly, and I found the LUT online somewhere, so I'm using that. So when I turn that on, you can see that it darkens the mask a little bit, and it takes this smoke from kind of a almost a purplish color to this kind of tealish color. Kind of just darkens it down and kind of gives it a little bit more of a punch. And then I added a second lookup table, which is from the movie The Witcher. I think it's a movie or a TV show. I've never actually seen it, but the LUT looks pretty fantastic. And this LUT here changed the smoke to be a little bit more gray and with a little bit of yellow in it. And the eyes have become much more yellow. Without it, the eyes are pretty much white. With it, the eyes are a lot more yellow, which just gives it a lot more dramatic punch and impact. Finally, the for the color grading part, the hue saturation layer, the red is very, very red, and Deadpool tends to have more of a muted red. He's not that bright of a red. So I took the hue saturation layer and just took the reds and just bumped it down just a smidge, just to kind of reduce that brightness of that red and make it a little bit more realistic. And then the next thing I did was to add a few textures. I love adding textures because it adds grit to the image, but I don't typically add it everywhere, as you'll see. So the first texture I added was this, it's like a crackle texture. It's blended in, so I will max it out here. So this is the actual image as applied. It's got a lot of nice scratches to it, which I thought would look good kind of around the edges. So the way I tend to do my textures is that I blend them in either using a hard light, an overlay, or a soft light layer. drop the opacity to something appropriate, and then I add a layer mask here to put the textures exactly where I want it. Without the layer mask, this texture really kind of obscures the whole mask and makes it a bit of a mess. So if we add this layer mask here, it kind of pushes the texture just to the outside. So the outside has that grit, but the inside is still nice and clean. Then I added a quick little light rays layer. I grabbed this from a light ray from my my library of special effects, but you could really just use a soft white brush and just kind of paint in some light. And that was just to kind of give the chin a little bit more of an environmentally similar look to the smoke above. And then I added another texture, and this texture is one that I use in a lot of my work. The texture looks like this. Two things I like about it. One is that it has these darkened edges, which kind of gives anything I put it on a natural vignette. And it also has this middle here, which has these yellows in it. And that kind of just gives it like a color grade yellow that appeals to me. Sometimes I'll desaturate the yellow out, but in this case I decided to leave it in. And as you can see, the opacity I left at 57% and the overlay blend mode. And another thing I did was I made this texture a smart object. And the reason why I did that is so I can use this Gaussian blur to blur out the texture in the middle. So if I take off the Gaussian blur, it's very subtle to see. You might not be able to see it in the video, but it's more gritty in the middle without it on. And with it on, it blurs out everything. So this allows me to blur the outs or blur the middle a little bit, but still keep the outside with that grit that I wanted from that texture. Finally, I use a brightness contrast adjustment layer just to darken the whole image, and then used a mask to bring out the center, creating a vignette. And that is the final image.